Well, welcome back, everybody, to Get a Job with Andrew and Riley. I'm Andrew, and
I'm Riley.
This is a podcast about calling, clarity, and that awkward in-between season.
You are listening to Get a Job, presented by Practically Pastoring, a podcast about calling, clarity, and the awkward in-between.
If you missed episode 1, I suggest that you hit pause on this and go back and listen to episode 1 so that you know where we've been and where we're going. But just to catch you up, Riley is in the midst of looking for a new ministry position, a new ministry calling. This is not a story about burnout or moral failings, but rather it's kind of a leadership friction story. It wasn't gelling as you would hope it would in his previous role. And so, Riley, how do you explain that as someone who is now interviewing and sending resumes out and also having conversations with your network and in the church where you're still serving that, hey, this isn't long-term, but...
Yeah, when they call my senior pastor who's on my resume, and, what's he going to say versus what am I going to say? And so really it's just explaining to them that, as Andrew mentioned, there is no moral failure. There was no egregious sin that led to this, or I probably wouldn't be employed by the church to begin with. Because some people ask, you're still employed by the church, but not in your role. And it's like, yes, let me explain. And so it's really you're just letting them...
I think that's it. It's yes, let me explain.
Yes, you got to let me give you the disclaimer here.
You need someone who is willing to hear you out for 10 minutes.
Yes. And so it's just explaining to them, one, just being open and honest. Like, you have to be honest. Clarity is key, especially if you want someone to hire you. And so it's just going, hey, you know what? Here's what happened. There was a chemistry issue, and the church is going in one way, and just view that because the way that they're going and the role I'm in, those two just don't mesh right now. And it's a kind of, hey, it's not you, it's not us, it's both of us, it's kind of us, kind of you situation. And so I'm explaining, hey, it's a chemistry thing, and I get it. Like, even internally, I've told our leadership team at the church, hey, I understand. Like, at the one level, I don't get it because I love the people and I believe the people love me. But in terms of the direction and where you want the church to go, I understand. And it's explaining to them, hey, you know what? This is what happened. But also, and for me, it's being open and honest, going, hey, when the news first hit, I didn't handle it very well. And being open and honest, saying, hey, you know what? There were some moments that maybe talked about that, hey, he ran his mouth a little bit, and I did. And so even in that, I'm being honest with those people who I've had a few interviews, and being honest, going, hey, I did react out of the flesh, but went back and talked to those people and had conversations, but just being clear and honest, knowing that they're going to call you references.
Yeah.
They're going to, Andrew kept telling me, hey, they're going to call your most recent employer, whether they're on your resume or not.
Yeah, and so put them on.
So put them on there. And so just doing that, being open and honest and clear.
So now you are in a season of kind of clarifying where God may be leading in this next season and figuring out what type of role or what type of church you want to pursue after kind of a difficult transition and what's going to be a prolonged transition just based on the time of year. I always say, there's when David is on his rooftop, it was the time of year when kings go off to war, but he was at home. There's a time of year when resumes go out to churches, and this is not happening during one of those natural seasons, which means it's going to be a kind of prolonged search process, but also means that you kind of get to sit and daydream about what's next and what you want next. And also your current church is not putting you in a position where it's like, we need you out of here. Your last paycheck is coming at this date. That's not on the table. So you kind of get to dream about what is next.
Yeah, the Lord has been gracious in that mindset of just, hey, I still have a job, and that I'm grateful for that. As I mentioned last episode, I'm grateful for my church and even what they're doing for me and my family during this season. And when this first happened, I reached out to some friends in a network and said, hey, you know what? This is what's happening, and I'd love to just have a conversation about ministry. And when we had that conversation, one of the things that he told me, which was really just a game changer for my wife and I, was, hey, begin now to make a list of things that you desire in your future job. And then he goes, and pray that list every day. He said when he was transitioning and felt God calling him to something new, he prayed for some very specific things. And some of them were non-negotiables. Some of them were like, you know what, like I could bend on this. And so it was hey, I'm not going to entertain a job unless it's hitting the majority of these things. That way, right away, you can begin to cancel some out and go, you know what, that's just not for me and my family. Again, I am been married almost 7 years now, fixing to be 7 years in a few weeks for when this is recorded. And got 2 kids, 1 on the way. So I have a very young family. And that goes into the thoughts of we have a young family that's growing and different things. And so it's really going, okay, what am I looking for? Making that list with your spouse included. Like your spouse has to be involved. And going, what are we looking for? What do we feel God's called us to? How has he wired us? And begin the process from there.
So how long between the conversation when you were told, hey, this is, you are not going to be in this role forever. We don't see you here on, in this particular role. So how long between kind of the anger and frustration of that conversation did you start to think about and look for what is next?
About a few weeks. And
there was a grieving process.
Yeah, there was a grieving process for sure. I was just not in my heart space, mind space, and different things. And so it was that moment of, allowing the pain to happen. Like, pain's real. I was listening to a podcast actually this morning driving in, and one of the guys said, like, church hurt is real, and pastors have more church hurt than any member will ever have. And it was kind of eye-opening to me, going, yeah, you know what, we hear members talk about church hurt all the time, like,
when it's
the church
they sang a song I didn't like.
Yeah, or they stopped doing hymns, or the lights are too bright, and all this stuff, and it's...
They called out my sin.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, they essentially fired me without firing me.
Yeah, or all of my close relationships were tied to one place, and then and then I was told, hey, don't come here anymore.
Yeah, so it was literally
if anyone should be allowed to talk about church hurt, it's pastors.
Yeah, and so for me, it was allowing the pain, because honestly, it was like Andrew kind of alluded to there. I had built some very strong relationships at this church. This was a church I was a part of as a college student, and my wife had built the strongest friendships in her adult life at this church, the campus we were at. And so and then being told, hey, you know what, like, you can't go in there right now. And it was hard. And so allowing that time to kind of grieve, and especially my wife, allowing her to grieve and get through that process. And it took time. But then from there, after a few weeks, I had the conversation of what are we looking for? What's next? I talked to my wife and I looked at her, and both of us agreed we cannot even fully heal if we stay here. Like, it's part of the healing process is leaving. It's like if you have a bad breakup with a boyfriend or girlfriend, it's like you're not going to stay hanging out with them and heal over and get over that.
Yeah, you're not having Thanksgiving with their parents.
Correct. You're going to have to distance yourself. And coming to that realization of going, you know what, in order to fully heal, we're going to have to distance ourselves. And the only way to do that is to get a new job.
Yeah.
And so we had to do that.
So did you feel rushed? This is a conversation we've been having in my house. My wife is a teacher, and her role at her particular school changed. And the school district that she teaches is like, no, we want you here. We want you in the district, just not at the school. And she's like, I'm going to take a couple weeks to figure it out. And I was like, it must be nice to have a few weeks to figure, because like not everybody gets that. Like sometimes if you're told, hey, your job is changing, you need to have resumes out that next day. You feel like you got to like take a beat, you got to breathe, and then like, be freed by God to be like, all right, it's time to start looking.
Yeah, I would say that for sure. And it was, hey, I suggest you kind of polish your resume up, and made the resume and got it polished up. And it was you know what, you're not fired. For us, we have we mentioned in the last episode, my wife is due with our 3rd child here soon. It's going, hey, we've already had the conversation, like regardless what happens, like you're on insurance through the baby, and like we've already made all that clear. And so that was freeing, and knowing, you know what, I've got people in my corner at the church even that do care about me and care about my family deeply. And so we want to do everything we can for Riley to help him thrive in the future, which has been, I'm grateful for that. And so it's been hard, but also freeing. Going, you know what? Like, there's that awkward of, hey, I'm applying for jobs and don't want you to know. Mine's like, hey, like, here's where I'm applying, by the way. And you may get a phone call. And that's been freeing.
Now, this might be fairly particular to your context, but you have spent the past 10-ish years in well-known, large Southern Baptist megachurches. Is that fair to say?
That is very fair to say, yes.
So like that is the world that you know. Are you looking to stay in that world? Are you looking, if there's the right role in that world, fine, but are you looking at, what are you looking for? What is kind of on that list that you have been making for yourself?
Yeah, one of the things is leadership opportunities. I'm wired to be a leader. I don't say that in arrogance. That's just truly who I am. And that's how the Lord has wired me.
So you're not looking at hospital chaplain
positions? I'm not looking at hospital chaplain positions. That is not what I'm looking to do. And honestly, I was in youth ministry for the first, chunk of ministry. Mm-hmm. And through this new role, I realized, you know what, that's just not me anymore. Mm-hmm. Just not me. And my stage of life with my family and everything like that is just...
I always say that some people, in spending 15 plus years in youth ministry and then kind of hitting pause and now being back in youth ministry here in our church. I'm the senior pastor who's also the youth pastor, but I always say that youth ministry goes in stages. You start as like the cool older brother or the fun uncle. And then by the time that you move, and so some people do really great at, when you met me, I was the fun older brother. I was the Robin to another youth pastor's Batman. My job was not to be like the serious guy. It was to kind of be the play second fiddle and to build relationships. And then in that next role that I was in, it was kind of that I was the young but fun uncle role in the church. And some people, they can get to that point and then it's like, that's where I need to stop. Some people kind of move into the, hey, I am a dad. I have a young family. And kids need to see that. But I think the more kids we add, the harder it is to be doing lock-ins, to be at football games, to do all the different things that come in student ministry. And then some people can be the grandfather still in student ministry, but there's natural off-ramps in student ministry when we hit different life stages. So I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, for this life stage, that's not who we are.
Yeah, and full disclosure, like, and Andrew can attest to this, is I went into student ministry, even when I took my job went from Arkansas to the church in Georgia. I was out for 5 years. I remember sitting down with the executive pastor in the interview process and then said, hey, man, I don't view this job as a stepping stone. Mm-hmm. I was like, I don't view it. And at that moment, go back almost 8 years ago, I was like, I'm in student ministry for life.
This is I'm
a lifer.
And I'm going to have green hair on the way to camp when I'm 50.
I was ready
if
for
I have
it.
hair.
I was all about it. And one of the things that happened when I was in Georgia or when our senior pastor would go on vacation in July, because big church pastors do that apparently, or some just go to Scotland or wherever you went for a little bit.
I was there for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
It was a sabbatical. It was fine.
It was good. And so when he'd be out of town, he gave me opportunity. I was blessed to be able to preach, and preach in the big room. It was like, man, I'm in the and so I began to realize that process of developing the sermons and delivering the sermons and. I began to really enjoy that. Mm-hmm. And even hanging out, I found myself hanging out more with parents than I was even in students, and realizing that I'm being wired towards adults more. And it was weird. Like, it was this awkward moment of, honestly, a moment of discontentment. And
there's a bit of an identity crisis in that. That's what I've felt. And similarly, when I was the student pastor, but I was being asked to step into a more associate role, and it was like, so like, I have to wear shoes. Like, I can't just be in flip-flops all the time.
Yeah.
That was a weird thing.
Yeah. And so really, when I felt that kind of discontentment, if you will, and all of a sudden there was the last summer in Georgia, I wasn't on the preaching calendar for July, and I didn't know why. We had some other younger guys that were having opportunities to do that. And I was like, I want the ball. Like, give me the ball. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden this job opened up here in Florida to preach more. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things I'm looking for is to preach. Okay. I've realized that I want to preach. It doesn't have to be every Sunday, but unfortunately, I've realized that a lot of these jobs, in order to preach more than
12 times a year,
you have to be the guy. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of rewired how I looked at things. Going, like, maybe I do need to apply to be the guy, and because I'd have a desire to preach, and I believe that the Lord's gifted me in that area. I've still got a long way to go.
But that also means that instead of applying to 2 or 3 dozen churches that are similar to the ones that you've been a part of across the country, now you can be like, all right, now there's hundreds of churches that theologically are aligned, but might be 150, 200 people as opposed to, 2,000 people.
Yeah, it's opened up a lot more doors because, again, you think the median size church in America is like 65.
Yeah, not a lot.
Not a lot. And so, again, in my world I've been in large churches, multi-campuses, thousands of people and different things. And so for me, it's going, you know what? I'm okay with being at a church that is much smaller. And, but it's going, what I'm beginning to look at, though, now is the demographic. Like, we've had this conversation. I know I'm not called, and some people are called to that small rural town.
Or in this case, I came to a church where the median age was 70 plus, and it has been wonderful.
Yeah.
That's not you.
That's not me.
Yeah.
That's just not who I am, and that's okay. And Andrew and I know this. Like, I can say that his context, like, his church loves being a one-service church.
Yeah.
And so he's like, you know what? That's who we want to be. The elders say that. We're going to be that. He knows that's not how I'm wired. And so for me, it's going, okay, if it's a church of, 150, 200, 300 people, like, that's awesome. But isn't an area that's growing? Is a church that, hey, we are 300 and that's all we're going to be, and this is who we are, we're not changing? Or is it, as I have conversations, going, this is an area that I believe we can really do some gospel work and grow the church through reaching the community and different things. And so that definitely goes into play.
So what parts of your calling do you think you're seeing evolve during this stage, and what things in your calling are staying the same?
I would say the desire to express more leadership is growing, and really wanting to grow as a leader. I was in a role where I was number 2, and really I led a little bit, but not much. It was kind of like, I think one of the things that got me in trouble was I was trying to do too much. And so it's all that is that leadership opportunities, but also the ability to go somewhere that believes in developing people. And whether that's me being developed under somebody, whether it's, in a discipleship role where it's able to teach still and preach some or different things, but also going somewhere where I can work with a team. I think team's a big thing. As I'm having conversations with churches, I'm asking, hey, what is the work environment like? Because in my previous ministry in Georgia, we had an office and everyone was in the office. And so you're rubbing shoulders, having those water cooler conversations that you could build those relationships. In the context I'm coming out of, the majority of the staff I worked with were part-timers. And so
you're in the office all by yourself all week.
I'm literally by myself all week. So I would see the campus staff on a Sunday morning, Wednesday afternoon for our meeting, and Wednesday night. And so it's hard to build those relationships. And they've got families, they got lives. And so having those water cooler conversations, it's, I'm not a big texter. I'm gonna pick up the phone and call you, or I'm a very big person to person. Like, I want to sit and talk with you and, have fun. And so somewhere that believes in that and has that culture of, I'm not hey, we're in the office 9 to 5, wear your collared shirt. That's not me.
But let's go get lunch after staff meeting.
Correct. And so I'm definitely looking at even just, hey, what's your staff culture like?
So what are you willing to change? We already talked about church size, but are you only looking at SBC churches? Are you willing to be in a like-minded Bible church? Are you I know some of these answers personally, but so we talk about church size, but geography, job description. What are you hoping for? Like, what are your? This is a hard and fast. I'm not willing to change. What are you kind of holding with a more open hand?
Yeah. I want to be in the Southeast because it's probably 70 degrees in Andrew's office because AC's on and I'm cold right now.
Yeah.
I am just, I've lived in Florida, I've lived in Texas, Arkansas, Georgia. Even with us young kids, I've got in-laws in different parts of Arkansas. My family's here in Florida. And so I want somewhere where it's not too difficult.
You want a one-flight option for grandparents.
For grandparents. And so somewhere in the Southeast, that's, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Mississippi, Missouri, even I'll consider Arkansas. That's SEC school, so you got Southeast there.
Texas is an SEC state.
It is,
now too.
And so I'll throw Texas in there. It's in the South, and I'm from
Oklahoma
there.
is Missouri.
I'm not doing SEC. Oklahoma. Missouri, certain parts maybe, but
Just saying,
somewhere
we're basing it on the SEC.
somewhere in the Southeast, if you were to cut me, I bleed to Southern Baptist. It's who I am. But with that being said, I told my wife, if the right church opens up, I'm willing to bend on that. Now we're going to have some conversations of what do you believe. There's one church I'm looking into, and they are not a Baptist church. But I went and looked at their beliefs, their leadership structure, and everything. And it's going, okay, you're a Baptist without being a Baptist. It's a non-denominational church.
I would say a
bunch of Baptist people left the Baptist church, and so we're going to be non-denominational.
We don't want that title associated with us.
Correct. Yeah, and so I'm willing to bend a little bit on that one if the right opportunity is there.
Makes sense. What has this season kind of revealed to you about the type of leadership you want to be under, whether that's deacons, elders, or a senior pastor? Like, who are you hoping to serve under? Who are you hoping to not serve under?
Yeah, I would say,
and this is no shade to where you've
no,
been,
not at all,
but just knowing yourself more in your mid 30s than you did in your late 20s.
Yeah,
who are you looking to serve under?
Yeah, and I have more of an understanding now of like, hey, you know what? Committee led versus elder led versus deacon led. I've taken those classes undergrad and seminary and done your church leadership papers and books, but until you're in it, you really don't understand it. And so I'm currently in a context where it is really committee led. We have the admin committee, which is the most powerful committee. You've got your deacons, but then you have your finance committee, your buildings and grounds committee, your HR personnel committee, your nominations committee. And so for me, I want to sit under somewhere that the people have a voice. And whether that is congregational led, elder led, we would say that we're elder led. We don't have elders, but we have deacons, pastors and deacons. But somewhere where the people are heard and listened to. Now, doesn't mean you do everything they want, but
they're at least heard. There's a voice.
There's a voice. And so whether that is, elder led, deacon led, but somewhere where the people can have a voice. But also understanding that, at the end of the day, like we serve with the pleasure of the Lord. And my mindset's always been, I serve with the pleasure of the pastor. And but going somewhere that values, and not that my current context doesn't value.
But it's just what is important to you now.
Correct, yeah. And so, I'm open to all, but really going, to me, if a perfect world would be, hey, the congregation nominates, the leaders, they're kind of your lay leaders, and the lay leaders then speak into the pastor and to the church, and then vice versa.
What are you doing right now? And so in the next episodes, we're going to get into resumes and using search organizations and all those things. But just for you personally, besides that stuff, what are you doing now to pursue clarity in your call, but also in what you're supposed to be doing? So whether, prayer, mentoring, fasting, therapy, journaling. Yeah,
definitely journaling. Read as I have my morning quiet times, the Lord, and just begin to kind of just type out what He's doing in my heart as I'm reading. It's one of those that I wasn't listening to Him early on in the process. I was reading through, was it 2 Samuel, all about David and Saul, and when David had multiple opportunities to take Saul out, and David said, "You know what? No, Lord, it's in Your timing," and I kept saying, "Hey, God, it's in Your timing." Then try to take matters in my own hands. And so
sneaking up on people in the cave.
Correct. Yes.
While they were pooping.
Hey, yes. If you're in the bathroom, I'm coming after you. No, I'm kidding. And that'll be a great clip here soon.
It's a different podcast.
But for me, it's going, like leaning in, God, what are you trying to do in my life? Like, again, I believe in the sovereignty God. I told my executive pastor, I said, here's the deal. I would be in a lot worse shape if I didn't believe we served a sovereign God. And so it's leaning and going, God, like I'm doing a 5-day-a-week reading plan. Shout out to Tim Miller for, revealing that to me. But going, hey, it's not an accident I'm on this date of this plan reading these passages. I even just finished Proverbs a few weeks ago. And it was like, man, all about humility and listening to reproof, even if you don't like the reproof, listening to it. And so I've been doing that. Going back and just reading some books on leadership, read one book, it's called When Life Unravels, and all about just how do you handle, tragic moments in life. And, it was written from the context of a pastor whose son was going through cancer treatments as like a 7-year-old. And, but for me, reading that, like my son doesn't have cancer, but I'm also going through a moment where I felt like my life was unraveling. And
You thought you knew how what the next season would look like, and suddenly
and it talked
you don't.
and it talked about just all mindset, the wrong things people say, like, oh, God's good, it's all going to work out. It's like, I understand that. You saying that doesn't make it any better.
Yeah.
Like your church isms and your proverb fortune cookie phrases, they don't do me any good right now. But then finding people in your life that will tell you not what you want to hear, what you need to hear. And so leaning into that, and then honestly leaning into my spouse, going, hey, you know what? Here's what I'm going through, crying with her, praying with her. And even my parents, like, I remember when this process began, I texted my dad. I said, hey, are you working from home or the office? And he told me, no, I'm working from the office. I said, can you come home? My parents live 15 minutes away from me. I said, I really need my dad right now. And it's one of the first really moments in my life I can look back and go, you know what? Like, I have ever said that. Like,
I would say, like, knowing you for most of your life, that wouldn't have happened even in your adult life at any other life stage.
Correct. And so, just lean into those relationships, people that know me and know some of the insides, and really just being vulnerable, I think, too, is I needed to be vulnerable. I like to hide things. I like to, I'm a man, and so I want to cover things up, and I've got this. But being vulnerable and allowing myself to cry and saying, God, what are you doing? And God, I don't understand, but I want to understand. And so really doing that. And then one thing, thanks to Andrew, I went back to school. And because, again, one thing, and we may get into this later, we'll get into resumes and stuff, but it's a lot of jobs are looking for things that weren't on my resume yet, but it could be very quickly. Yeah. And so doing things to help me as well.
So last question, I've got two questions left. One for you and then one kind of for whoever's listening. Yep. What is God teaching you about what it looks like to wait?
It's hard. I alluded to this in the previous episode. I don't sit well. I just don't. I never have in my life. I like to do, I like to go, I like to run. Not physically run. I hate running. And so the Lord's been teaching me, hey, like, it's okay to slow down. And it's okay to not know what's next. And so for me, it's kind of, for the first time in my life, again, I've had multiple ministry jobs, but everyone's come to me. And that's in a dream world. That's the best. Hey, someone so-and-so talked about you. Hey, you've got opportunity. It comes to you. And for me, it's like, no, I'm now going to have to go to it. And it's weird. And it's like, I almost feel like you're trying to prop yourself up and, promote yourself.
It's such an odd thing.
But reminding myself that just like those opportunities in the past came to me, like, it's going to happen again. And allowing, just really, for me, it's been a sweet time with my family, with my kids, with my wife, and really just going, okay, what are some things I can even rewire in my own life with my family that I may have been neglecting because of what the job was doing. Yeah. And so going, okay, God, you're doing something in the waiting. What are you trying to do in the waiting for me and for my family right now that's going to propel us and set us up for what you have next?
So what advice would you give to the ministry leader who's tuning in, whether when this is airing or 6 years from now, they pull up? That's kind of one of the joys of this type of podcast, is it's only going to be one season, but it's going to be information and experiences that I think will translate.
When they Google, how do I get a job?
Yeah. So what advice do you give to someone who knows they need something new, but they feel stuck or scared to take those initial steps in leaving where they're at?
Yeah. One, God is good. He knows what you're feeling. And other people can sense it too. And it's
you're going to surprise way less people than you think you're going to surprise.
Correct. And lean into it. Like, don't run from it. I ran from it early on. Like Andrew can tell you, the writing was on the wall.
I've been telling him for years, this is not a good fit.
The writing's been on the wall for a while, and I just didn't want to admit it. I didn't want to believe it because I thought I knew what was best. And I thought, God, this is where you've called me. This is where I'm supposed to be. And without a doubt, this is like who I am. And going, okay, God, maybe you know me better than I do. And so just lean into it. Find some close people in your network, some friends, reach out to someone from the Practically Pastoring Network and say, hey, you know what? This is what I'm feeling. Can you just help me discern this? And they'll talk to you. Like Andrew can tell you, looking back, this wasn't the best fit for me. And there's been multiple times in my life where I've listened to Andrew and things have turned out well, and I should probably do that more often. And but listening to those who know you,
listen, I signed off on his wife before his parents had even met her.
It's true.
I met her like this is the one.
He did. He's the one that told me to go to a certain. My undergrad's from a school that he told me to go to. My master's degree is going to be because he made me finish it. There's so many things in life that Andrew has told me to do, and I did them. And so just lean in, don't run, and be vulnerable. Like open up. One thing I love about reading through the Psalms is you read that and over and over again, you read David saying, God, like, help me worship you. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm struggling. My enemies are surrounding me. I felt that. I felt like my enemies were surrounding me, and they weren't my enemies. But in my mind, they're my enemies. Mm-hmm. Like going, hey, like, be open and honest to God. God's not afraid of how you feel. He wants you to express those to him. Never once do we see God ever respond to David going, how dare you question me?
Who do you think you are?
How dare you cry and say, God, my soul doesn't want to worship you, but help me, oh my soul, bless me, oh my soul. It's going, you know what? Like, be open and honest with the Lord, be open and honest with those around you that can help you. And then just wait back and see what God does. Now, it's not a sit on your hands, do nothing. It's this actively waiting, growing in your sanctification, knowing that the Lord is going to take you where he wants you to be in his sovereign plan.
Hey, this has been episode 2 of Get a Job with Andrew and Riley. We'll be back next time as we start to talk about what it looks like to start applying, starting to get your name out there. So we will see you back then. Get a Job is presented by Practically Pastoring. It is recorded and edited by me, Andrew Larson, and it is produced by Andrew Larson and Riley Lester.